You're welcome back to Business Morning. The economy has been in a critical situation in the past months with efforts by the government to ramp up revenues. Now, we're yet to see how inflation in the month of July looks like, as the National Bureau of Statistics says we will know the inflation rate by the end of August. Now, a few weeks from now, the Central Bank of Nigeria Monetary Policy Committee is expected to meet. Again, let's assess the economy as we take a look at these issues. Don't forget, this week, the U.S. Fed will be meeting at Jackson Hole to decide on interest rate. And many analysts are saying that perhaps the Fed would have to raise its key interest rates. We'll see how all of this play out and how that would affect the global economy. Now, Dr. Ogo Okiti, the chief executive at Time Economics, joins me from our Abuja studio to take a look at these economic issues. Good morning, Dr. Okiti.
Good morning.
Now,
Thank you.
The picture about the economy has not been too good. Growth forecast of 1.8% this year and expectations on a monetary policy rate slash were dashed by the MPC at the last meeting. What is your assessment on the economy at the moment?
Yeah, thank you. And I think we should start from the three important data that we are expecting at the end of this month. The first one is the GDP data. We expect that will confirm that Nigeria actually entered recession in the month of June. And the second important data is the unemployment figures. That will tell us how much was the dynamics between the GDP and the unemployment in the country in the in the second quarter of the year. And the third one is the inflation figures as well. So I think we'll be able to assess what has actually happened in the last quarter when we have those three figures at the end of the month. And when we say assessment, we need to be able to confirm whether Nigeria is still bleeding or we are just about to turn the corner in relation to the economy. Yes.
Now, talking about the GDP figures as well as inflation and unemployment, the last figures that we had as regards inflation, we saw it at 16.5%, and there is a forecast that it could breach 17% when this new figure, that is for the month of July, is released by the NBS. Now, do you think we need any further confirmation as to the state of the economy, as stated by the Ministry of Finance, that we are in recession?
Well, like I said, I think everybody believes we are in recession because I believe the minister, the two ministers that I've spoken about it so far, I think they are privy to the data that the MBS has. And given the strong indications that they made, I think we actually did enter recession. But nonetheless, that what they have said has not confirmed by how much the GDP actually declined. We will not know that until the end of this month. That's the first thing. Okay. Then also in relation to inflation, we would like to know whether the rate of price increase is going up. If you look at the figure that actually came out in the June figure that came out in July, we realized that that was this smaller increase in price that we have seen this year. So that gave an indication that the volatility is slowing down. So we would not like to know at the end of this month whether that has gone up or is coming further down. Meaning inflation can actually go up, but the rate of price increase can actually come down. So that will confirm, that will determine how bad the situation is in relation to inflation. If you actually also look at the unemployment figure, since we started having quarterly releases of unemployment figures, this is the first time since I think 2005, we've been having consistent increases in unemployment. So we need to also understand what actually happens to the dynamics of GDP growth and unemployment. So this is what I mean by until these figures actually come out, we will not be able to determine whether Nigeria is still bleeding or we are just at the point of stopping the bleed. And once we are able to stop the bleeding, then we can probably start turning the corner. So I think these are very important statistics that we expect at the end of this month.
Let's talk about interest rate a little bit. A few weeks from now, the MPC will be meeting to decide on the rate direction. At the moment, we're seeing interest rates in the economy on an upward trajectory because of a hike in the MPR. Now, is this sustainable? Because many analysts are of the view that perhaps the interest rate should have been slashed by the MPC at the last meeting.
I think, I do not envy the MPC. We need to move away from these, from the narrative that the only consideration for borrowing, or the only consideration for business profit, or the only consideration for business success is just interest rate. Interest rate is very, very important. But there are other cost elements that businesses also face that we can look into to help the business environment. And I think the government would do well to intensify efforts in that direction. We cannot have a runaway inflation rate and continue to decrease interest rate. It does not work like that because there are other dynamics. There are the banks. The stability of the banks are important. The stability for savings is important. Macroeconomic stability in every area is actually very, very important. So we need to take all this into consideration and not focus on the determination of interest rates alone. So all efforts that improve the business environment should be our focus.
Let's take a look at the bigger picture, the global economy. The U.S. Fed will be meeting 2 days from now at Jackson Hole to consider interest rates. Many people are of the view, many analysts are of the view that perhaps this is a time for the Fed to hike its interest rate. If that is the situation, how would that impact on global growth?
Well, my understanding is that the U.S. Fed has said they will increase interest rate once before the end of the year. If you recall, at the start of the year, they had planned to increase interest rate 4 times in 2016. They've done it once so far, and they plan to do it one more time before the end of the year. And we are not going to see that figure this weekend. I think the meeting is different from the meeting of setting interest rate. So my expectation is something we may see in September or in October, but definitely not this month. Given, okay, that said, if they do increase interest rate, because at the moment the U.S. interest rate and for most of the advanced economy is virtually zero, and that has given opportunities for countries such as Nigeria, where you have high interest rate, to attract some capital flows. Of course, given that other parameters are also beneficial, so that is important. Okay. What I'm trying to say is that even we may be able to attract portfolio flows, but interest rate is not their only consideration. We also need to look at the other consideration.
All right.
But in the sense that if interest rate do go up, it now means that some of the resources, or let me say some of the flows that we currently are able to attract, we may not be able to attract them. But I do not expect anything significant to change before the end of the year. Maybe another 0.25%, and that will be hit. And I think that's not significant. It should not have any significant effect on Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ogo Okiti, CEO, Time Economics, talking to us about the state of the economy.